Hello, and welcome to a session of Centennial College at the library. If you're just joining us, you can find us at library.centennialcollege.ca. And remember that access to the online library is just a click away with your MyCentennial login credentials. In this segment, today, we'll be unraveling the mystery of peer review. What is peer review, and why is it important to us? Let's find out. As no surprise, we can learn about peer review quickly by turning to the Oxford English Dictionary. It has to say the following: peer review is the review of commercial, professional, or academic efficiency, competence, etc. by others in the same occupation. An instance of this. Would it surprise you to know that the Centennial College Library gives you access to the complete Oxford English Dictionary? Let's go there and have a look. We'll migrate over to the library's homepage, select e-resources, and enter the database of interest. Oxford English Dictionary. We bypassed the login process because I was here recently. This is good news for you. Once you enter a collection and you want to change collections, you don't have to log in again. Let's have a look at a new definition. We'll see what the OED has to say about scholarly. We'll try the first one. Accordingly, scholarly is relating to or characterizing a scholar or scholars, befitting or natural to a scholar, involving or concerned with research, education, and scholarship, academic, intellectual. It sounds very important, something we should pay attention to. Now let's return to our PowerPoint. Ever ask yourself when you're confronted with an assignment, what do professors actually mean by peer review? What do they want you to do? Here's an example of the start of an annotated bibliography assignment for Communications 171. Primary source. Reading from the textbook listed using APA style of formatting. A short summary of the reading. Make sure to include the author's main idea. How is the essay related to your thesis? Next part. Secondary source 1. Scholarly article listed using APA style of formatting. Like you, I asked the same question. What does a professor really mean? What's so core about that scholarly article? Do they have a kind of prejudice or bias against other types of articles, such as magazine articles or newspaper articles? Are they determined to force you, the student, to work extra hard? Or is it simply about attempting to ensure that you, the student, read and draw upon quality, research-intensive articles? Perhaps it's somehow a mix of all of these ideas. Let's take a closer look at the meaning of peer review. We'll do that by using the example of this article written by Professor Hollis. Professor Hollis, actually, she wrote a chapter entitled Ghost Students and the New Wave of Online Cheating for Community College Students. This article was reviewed by 3 reviewers, and of course, looked over by Professor Hollis. Here's an excerpt, a sentence from page 2 of her article. Can you spot the problem? Is there even a problem to be spotted? Let's read it together. King and Case, 2014. In other words, Professor Hollis is quoting or referencing another article. King and Case, 2014, noted an increase of students who felt it was easy to cheat online. In 2009, 63% of students perceived it was easy to cheat, but in 2017, 74% felt cheating in an online exam was easy. Let's take a minute to consider any potential problem. And there it is. Unless King and Case can see into the future, how could they know, in publishing their article in 2014, what was going on in 2017? Yes, this is a mistake, perhaps, on page 2 of an article that was looked over by the author and 3 additional reviewers. And look, it took a librarian to discover a mistake. So perhaps peer review isn't exactly all that it's meant to be. We'll keep that in mind going forward. Let's begin by walking into some places that scholarly articles call home, the online library. We'll migrate again to the library's collections. Let's change collections and go into Business Source Complete. Back at our eResources tab, we'll change collections. We'll try this, Business Source Complete. You see the primary interface, where it all happens, and then you see you have access to these advanced search features. There are many things to consider as you search and consider searching, including this box right here, scholarly, peer-reviewed journals. We'll select the box and watch the magic happen. Okay, I guess this means we're done.
That was easy.
Yes, that was easy. We check a box and we're ready to go. Let's wrap up. Call it a day. We're done here. We've accomplished our task. Or have we? Let's explore further. Wouldn't you know it, that databases have competing or different definitions of peer review? Here's the one we're working in now. According to Business Source Complete, they consider peer review to be the following. Peer review limits search results to articles from peer-reviewed journals. Peer-reviewed journals are publications that include only those articles that have been reviewed and or qualified by a selected panel of acknowledged experts in the field of study covered by the journal. Sometimes a definition leaves more questions than answers. What does it mean to be reviewed? What does it mean to be qualified? Are they the same? How are they different? Again, another database provides a different definition of their consideration for peer review. According to this other database, a publication is peer-reviewed in which articles go through an official editorial process that involves review and approval by the author's peers, people who are experts in the same subject area. Most, but not all, scholarly publications are peer-reviewed. In fact, some trade publications are peer-reviewed. ProQuest, that's the name of the database collection, uses Ulrich's Web, in other words, a third party, as the primary reference source to categorize peer-reviewed publications. In this case, the database is reaching out to a third party to define peer review for them. Furthermore, Scholarly seems to be confused a little bit with peer review, so that the definitions are not clear. Furthermore, the concept of peer review tends to exclude some vital and useful publications. In this example, if you search for the Harvard Business Review articles in this publication, and you select peer review, you find no results. In Business Source Complete, Harvard Business Review is not considered a peer-reviewed publication. So in this other example, searching on the Harvard Business Review without selecting peer review, you get access to over 29,000 articles. So if by chance, by accident, if by what seems to be a logical process, you select peer review, you're eliminating the possibility of nearly 30,000 articles of interest. Of course, we've all heard of Harvard, more or less. Let's take a closer look at some notes to prospective authors that Harvard includes in their submission guidelines. Here are 5 qualities that Harvard Business Review looks for when they're evaluating what to publish. So if you or I want to publish something in the HBR, you have to have 1, expertise. In other words, you don't have to be well-known to be a contributor, but you must know a lot about the subject you're writing about. Also, HBR's editorial process is more thorough than many other publishers, and you may be asked to do multiple rounds of revisions. Contributors frequently tell us that they appreciate the extra care and attention to their work. At HBR, they strive for authenticity. They don't publish pieces that have appeared elsewhere or that come across as promotional, or that do not include rigorous citations, though these may not appear in the finished piece. In other words, if you're submitting to HBR, your work needs rigorous citations, in other words, backed by quality research, even though these particular features are not published in the final piece. This sounds very scholarly. It sounds almost as if it could be peer-reviewed. So why should we exclude it from peer review or scholarly publications? Let's take a little break now. Let's turn to trivia as we're kind of halfway through our talk. Let's talk about Canadian political trivia as a brief interlude, as an aside from considering the meaning of peer review. Let's do one question. What Canadian Prime Minister held conversations with his deceased mother while serving as Prime Minister? Was it Brian Mulroney? Was it William Lloyd Mackenzie King? Perhaps it was Sir John A. Macdonald, or even Arthur Meehan. We'll pause for a minute to consider. Well, this fellow, Mr. Mulroney, takes the blame for a lot of things. However, while he was Prime Minister, his mother was alive and well. Strike that off our list of possibilities. However, it was indeed William Lloyd Mackenzie King. Mackenzie King has continued to intrigue Canadians. Critics argue that his political longevity was achieved by evasions and indecision. Sound familiar? And that he failed to provide creative leadership. His defenders argue that King gradually altered Canada, a difficult country to govern, while keeping the nation united. And now for the punchline. King's political achievements have often been overshadowed by the revelation that this apparently proper and colorless man was a spiritualist who frequently sought contact with his mother and other dead relatives and friends. You can read about the details in King's diary that's published and available in the library. Now, let's return to the main headline, peer review. Whatever you decide about checking the peer-reviewed box, here are some guidelines to follow. Peer review articles will, often, even sometimes, have the name journal as part of the title. They'll be longer in length. They'll include an author note indicating the author's affiliation with a university or college. And they'll include a list of references. Keep in mind that I use the word sometimes. Here's an example that illustrates most of the points I talked about in the slide previously. This article, China's Leadership Crisis, Danger and Opportunity, comes indeed from a publication with the word journal in it, the Journal of Business and Society. And, as you might expect, it's a little bit longer in length, going beyond 3, 4, and 5 pages to 12 pages. And it has an author note within the pages. The author, one of the authors, Dr. John Z. Yang, is the Dean of Beijing International, and he is also Associate Dean of the Business School at Fordham University in New York. So you can rest assured that he knows what he's talking about. And I've also included the beginning of a long list of references that he cites in his article. Once again, whether or not you check peer-reviewed, a good way to find articles of quality and reliability is to pay attention to the author note. Here is a snapshot from an article in the Harvard Business Review. You know, that publication that didn't meet the standard of peer review. Anyways, here is a typical author that you can find in the Harvard Business Review. This author is the Jesse Isidore Strauss Professor of Business Administration at Harvard, and the author of a book, Better, Not Perfect, A Realist Guide to Maximum Sustainable Goodness. Clearly, this individual is well qualified to write about a new model for ethical leadership. Another thing to consider when you are leafing through the pages of a scholarly publication, not everything is peer-reviewed within the pages. Here are some examples taken from the Canadian Journal of History. Notice that these examples are 2 or 3 pages in length. That's because these are book reviews. While important, book reviews are not considered peer review, even though they reside in peer-reviewed journals. Another feature to consider, taken from the Journal of Psychology and Christianity. Sometimes special issues of journals include, in addition to the articles, introductions to the edition. So this example provides an introduction to the special issue on disasters, religion, and spirituality. While the introduction is very important and contains useful and good information, it is not considered peer-reviewed. even though it resides in a peer-reviewed publication. These are some things to consider as you go through the process in considering peer review and what it means for your own assignment. Now let's move on. Now that you have found a peer-reviewed article, in our example, we'll work with this article, Religiosity and Honesty, Still Searching for the Elusive Relationship. Now that we've found one of these things, what do we do with it? Or how do we read it? Let's find out. There are a few ways to structure a peer-reviewed article. Many articles that you encounter will have common features, and you can break an article apart into familiar parts. Here are some of the parts that you can commonly find: an abstract, the introduction, a literature review, a methods section, results, discussion, conclusion, and a list of references. We'll take a look at a few of these items and see how they can be helpful. 1. The abstract. It provides a window into the whole of the article and helps you sift through your search results. In this example, you can read things like 69 first-year students at a Christian university were given an opportunity to report whether they were given too many marks on an assignment. It gets to the crux of the article in just a few words, and it can help you make decisions of whether or not you want to continue in this particular article or move on to others. As I mentioned, we're skipping some parts. We'll move on to the literature review. The literature review alludes to and tips you off to more and other interesting possibilities. In this example, we'll read like this: as one of only a handful of studies that use behavioral measures of honesty when looking for the effects of religion, Heron's study is worth revisiting. The scenario that he sets up in a classroom mimics a potential real-world decision in the world of these participants. As a student, what do you do when you are given marks that you have not earned, particularly when you're asked to check and report any discrepancies? So, as you can see, the literature review sometimes points to other useful and interesting studies and produces the important parts, the salient features of those studies. 5. Results. After a hard slog, it is sometimes useful to read the first sentence of lead paragraphs to understand the flow of the study. As in this example, of the 69 students that were given an extra mark, 32% honestly reported the error. Oh my, you might say. 6. The discussion part. This is the real core of the article that encloses the results and wraps them around and within the wider context of other research, as we can see below. Although religious motivation was not a significant predictor of honesty in this study, one of the personality variables suggested by previous research, conscientiousness, did predict honesty. This is consistent with common sense and with the findings of Horn and colleagues. You see the authors drawing the conclusions made together with other research. Finally, references. The list of references provides a quick way into other useful sources. For example, we have the full citation for Perrin's article, which is Religiosity and Honesty, Continuing the Search for the Consequential Dimension, published in the Review of Religious Research. You can take this reference and see if the library has access to this particular article. One way to do that is to see if we have access to the journal, the Review of Religious Research. Let's do that. We'll return to the library's homepage and have a look at a different part of our collection. We'll have a look in the full text journal feature. This allows us to see if we have access to a particular publication. Again, let's go back and refresh our memory. The Review of Religious Research. We'll cross our fingers and go. And you'll note that yes, indeed, the library collection does include this publication within its holdings. However, we also note that the parent article was published in the year 2000. Unfortunately, our coverage begins in 2011 and heads up to the end of 2018. While we have some access to this publication, we're not able to get this particular article. But no worries. You can always speak to or contact a librarian, and we can use our document delivery services to tap into the resources of other universities and colleges to get that article for you. And finally, whether you decide on peer review or scholarly or some other configuration, keep in mind that reading is key. Reading will keep you going. It'll sustain you as you write your paper. If you want to get in touch with me, here's my extension and my email address, rsims@centennialcollege.ca. Best of luck, and thank you for joining me on this journey of peer review.